Annie Trimber, flute. From high school, it says here, with exclamation points. Annie, thank you so much for playing.
Thank you.
You know, one of the interesting things about doing master classes, I'm an orchestra player, and so every note that I'm supposed to play is mapped out by the composer, who may have lived hundreds of years ago. The conductor chooses the speed at which I'm going to play those notes, and also, to a certain extent, the dynamics. The composer has done that as well. Then the concert dates are set almost a year in advance by managers and program directors and people of that ilk. And then comes the time of the concert, and maybe the conductor has a friend backstage and decides to talk a little bit and comes out 1 minute later, and I'm waiting for the rite of spring, So they don't realize these little things that we all go through as performers. However, in a master class, there's a certain amount of freedom, and so I feel a little bit like a jazz musician here. You never know what's going to happen in a master class, and that's part of the excitement of it. So, pardon me for that. All right, and you are, let's see what this is. Bach?
Bach, E flat, the Siciliana.
Wonderful. Very nice. Beautiful. Very nice. Very nice. Oh, beautiful job, by the way. I think that it's highly laudable that there have been some, what I would term, skeletal tones circled in your music. For instance, in bar 20 and 21, 19, 20, and 21. You see that? Mm-hmm. That the B flat going down to A, going to G, going to F is so wonderful. I wish that in high school, that I had someone to really explain the value of understanding the skeletal framework upon which all these other notes rest. I think that some of it I was able to sort of glean by instinct, but the operative word here is some. So I was, I had some distance to go yet before I was able to understand a little more of it. I can't say I'm there yet, but I'm understanding more and more about what's going on musically. Music is such a complex issue, and there's so many things to think about. At any rate, let's start right from the beginning. And instead of playing the whole thing as it's written, how about let's try breaking it down to some skeletal tones, like we talked about that you had marked in bars 19, 20, and 21. But let's do that from the beginning. So you can see that at the beginning, the D keeps getting repeated, right? That would indicate any note that's in a beat or a bar where there's lots of notes that keeps getting repeated, chances are, it's not always the case, but chances are that's going to be your skeletal pitch from which the rest diverge. So let's take this D and sustain it for 5 beats, and then you've got an E flat on the last beat of the bar, which takes you to the long C, which is the whole length of the bar. So let's just hear the whole thing, those 2 bars, played with a D for 5 beats, with a pickup E flat leading you to a C for 6 beats. Okay? 4, 5, 6. And it would be the same thing here. Yes, now that's really what's happening skeletally. You can sense that it's going down and down and down. Now, what's the importance of knowing the skeletal structure if it doesn't have some intrinsic intensities involved in the notes themselves? And let me explain this a little bit. I was very fortunate that while I was a student at the Curtis Institute, there was a great conductor who made his American debut and spent a month at the Curtis Institute giving classes and rehearsals, and his name was Sergiu Celibidache. Now, Celibidache was an eccentric figure, to say the least, and he is a very highly controversial musician. He's been gone for a while now. He died in 1996 and was born in 1912. At any rate, he came and spent the whole month there at Curtis, gave one of the, I would say, most stupendous concerts I have ever had the pleasure of being a part of. And I was only 21 at the time. Sort of spoiled a lot of my professional career after that because I was expecting this is what it's like in the professional world. Well, Celibidache was a phenomenon, and he proved it in so many ways. Well, he talked about an issue that he termed, and it's a very common term actually for study, it's called phenomenology. And it's a very long word that has a very simple meaning. It's really the study of natural phenomena. And he was talking about the phenomenon of vibration and how that affects one's phrasing. Well, let's do a little experiment here. If I was to just have you sing any note, let's pick a generic pitch. What's a comfortable, just sing a note that's in the middle of your range. Beautiful. Actually, that's quite nice.
I'm a singer.
Oh, okay. Well, then let's just go a half step above. Now let's go back to the original note. Now let's do the half step below. Now, I would imagine, even though you have proper singing technique to back you up, that there is a sensation that you can feel of rising intensity as you go up and of lowering intensity as you go down. In speaking, it's the same. If I'm speaking and I am getting more excited, I go up and it gets a little more tense, and then as I go down, it gets more relaxed. Well, this is exactly the same thing that happens with musical tones, that there is an inherent vibration to that D. I don't know what the actual vibration number would be. I know A, we tend to tune to A440 or 442. So this is somewhat higher than that, probably in the 600s. Maybe it's 590 something. I don't know, but it's up there. And as you get a little down from that, it goes lower and lower and lower and lower. So let's take this as our physiological given. In other words, it's the way things are. That as you go lower, there is a lessening of vibration. And let's highlight that ever so slightly with a lessening of tension. So here is an unusual phrasing where you begin with more intensity in the first bar. You have a little less in the second bar, a little less in the third bar, and a little less in the fourth bar. So even though we're thinking of forward motion, going someplace, there is a lessening of the general tension, bar by bar. Let's play just again this little skeletal structure you gave me and think of a little more volume. What you're doing is you're highlighting the natural vibration rate of the notes by giving a little more here and a little less, following. Okay? Okay, a little more dynamic, I think, could highlight that, because this is your highest note, right? D, and then C, and then B flat. And then C, and then B flat. Now you repeat the C, so a little bit of intensity, and then relax. All right. So we talked about repetition in the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, just before you played, about how when you repeat a note. Let's apply a little bit of that here. You repeat that C. Now let's put back all the notes. And just remember that skeletal structure, okay, that it's a little more intense on the D, resolving to the C. Then you repeat the C with a little intensity and resolve to the B flat. Okay. You're being very, very gentle. I want you to give a little more dynamic on that. Don't be afraid. I know you've practiced it probably this way to come in from nothing, which is highly laudable. I just want you to try something a little different and just state it, I wouldn't say emphatically, but state it with conviction, with a certain amount of inner conviction. All right, so now we're getting a sense of phrasing that goes with the skeletal structure. To me, it goes with the skeletal structure. Now, there are many, many times where exceptions to this rule happen. But you can only recognize an exception once you accept the existence of a rule. And I certainly, through all those classes and rehearsals with Celibidache, was convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that this rule is musical and that it creates greater expression and that it goes with nature rather than against the vibrations of the notes. There are times, however, when you will reach a cadence which goes down and down and down, and because of the magnetic pull of the cadence, you'll go with it and have something very profound and deep and loud there at the end of the phrase. However, here we have a very gentle kind of a cadence, which you gave very beautifully. You gave on that little C grace note, which I think is a highly important note. Nice dissonance there. Now, when we talk about these skeletal tones, if you think of them as having a certain gravity, an inner pull, the farther away you would go pitch-wise from, say, this D is being sustained like this, the farther away you are going up higher or lower, let's say there's less gravitational pull. It's like planets around the sun. There's less of a connection to this. So try to play softer, for instance, your high A in the third bar. So we would play the high G a little less in the first bar. Ti ta ta ti ta ti 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 ta ta ti ho ti ti ho. Try not to let those high notes stick out. They are the farthest away from the notes that have the gravitational pull to them. You understand? Do you understand that concept? The farther away you go from a skeletal tone, the less dynamic it should have. As a general rule, again, there are exceptions to this rule, but I think here it follows quite logically. Let's try it from the beginning, and a full tone from the first note. Okay, let's try that again. Let's play a very soft G for me. Little softer if you can. Now you see 2 bars later you have an A. Let's play a very soft A. Okay. Now I'd like you to play the D, the first note D. Just give me that dynamic. Now give me the dynamic of the third bar, which is the C. La, that's the repeated C, so that's good. All right, now play the D and the G. And the C and the A. You see, it's an even greater distance.
Yeah.
All right? We've taken this interval of the D and the G, this fourth here, and we've just expanded it to a sixth. Sustain. Repeat your note. There it is. There it is. A lot of work to get to a certain point in the music making. But to me, this makes sense. I suppose it's because I'm saying it. But I hope it makes sense to you and maybe some of you out there that this is a concept that you might put to use, is this idea that skeletal tones have a certain gravity, and the farther away you are, either above or below those notes, the softer you can afford to play. And you see that second far away note, that A, is even farther from the C than the first one, which is a G to the D. So it's an even greater difference in dynamic contrast. And you gave that contrast, which is beautiful. Well, I think you've helped to explain, helped me to elucidate it on a certain principle here, and I want to thank you very much for playing today. Yay. Beautiful. Thank you. I hope you got something out of that. Okay.